To set the stage, let's dive into the origins of Islamic theology, or Ilm al-Kalām. Dr. Khalid, what were the key issues that shaped early Kalām, and how did these debates distinguish themselves from other religious traditions?
The earliest debates in Kalām revolved around questions like divine attributes, free will versus predestination, and human responsibility. Unlike scriptural literalists, early theologians such as the Qadarites and Jabarites engaged deeply with rational inquiry, responding not only to intra-Muslim disputes, but also to Christian and Jewish philosophical influences.
That's fascinating. How did this rationalist orientation set Islamic theology apart from other religious approaches of that era?
Islamic theology's emphasis on reason, or aql, created a distinct intellectual culture. While Christian scholasticism often prioritized revelation, Kalām insisted that faith could and should be harmonized with rational thought, setting a unique precedent in the medieval world.
Building on those foundations, let's explore the main theological schools within Kalām. Could you compare the Mu'tazilite, Asharite, and Maturidite traditions for our listeners?
Certainly, the Mu'tazilites were rationalists, asserting that God's justice and unity should be understood primarily through reason. They maintained that humans possess free will and are morally accountable. The Asharites, however, sought a middle path affirming God's attributes, but stressing their transcendence and unknowability, and introduced concepts like occasionalism.
And how did the Maturidites fit into this landscape?
The Maturidites, prominent in Central Asia and the Ottoman Empire, echoed Asharite theology, but gave even greater weight to reason. They believed moral truths could be grasped independently of revelation, which had practical implications for Islamic law and ethics.
Moving forward in history, how did Kalām become institutionalized, and what impact did this have on its intellectual development?
Between the 10th and 14th centuries, Kalām was systematized within madaris, or Islamic colleges. Scholars like Al-Ghazali synthesized rational theology with mysticism and Greek philosophy, while figures such as Fakhr al-Din al-Razi expanded on logic and metaphysics. This period saw Kalām become a core part of the Islamic educational curriculum.
It's interesting to see parallels with European scholasticism. Did this synthesis change the nature of theological debate?
Absolutely. As Kalām adopted philosophical tools, debates became more rigorous and technical. For example, discussions about the createdness of the Quran and divine causality grew increasingly sophisticated, attracting critiques from both Sufi mystics and scripturalists.
Let's transition to the modern era. How did colonialism and the advent of Western modernity challenge established Islamic theology?
Colonial rule disrupted traditional seminaries and imposed Western educational models. This led to a marginalization of Kalām as colonial authorities promoted secular curricula. In response, Muslim reformers debated whether to embrace rationalist reinterpretation or return to scriptural literalism, fueling movements like Salafism and the rationalist revival of thinkers like Muhammad Abduh.
How did these reformist currents reshape theological discourse in the Muslim world?
Salafis largely rejected speculative theology as innovation, while modernists strove to reconcile Islam with science and democracy. This tension continues today, shaping debates on religious authority and the compatibility of Islam with modern values.
In today's academic context, how is Islamic theology taught and researched, both in traditional seminaries and Western universities?
Modern Islamic theology has diversified in both content and context. Traditional madaris like Al-Azhar maintain classical curricula but address contemporary questions, while Western universities such as Harvard or Leiden offer interdisciplinary programs. These include modules on Islamic ethics, science, gender, and comparative religion, reflecting global academic trends.
Does this mean there's now a greater integration between theology and other academic fields?
Exactly. Courses increasingly blend theology with philosophy, science, and even technology studies, fostering dialogue between faith traditions and secular paradigms. This interdisciplinary approach is vital for addressing complex modern challenges.
An area of increasing focus is the interaction between Islamic theology and scientific advancement. How are contemporary scholars navigating topics like evolution or artificial intelligence?
Debates on evolution, bioethics, and AI are prompting theologians to revisit classical notions of causality and human agency. For example, Nidhal Gassoum's work explores how quantum physics can be reconciled with Islamic metaphysics, illustrating a willingness to engage with cutting-edge science while upholding theological principles.
Can you give a practical example of how Islamic theology might address issues in bioethics?
Certainly, questions about gene editing or end-of-life care often draw upon both scriptural texts and rational ethical reasoning. Islamic bioethicists collaborate with medical professionals to develop guidelines that balance religious norms with scientific realities.
Let's discuss how Islamic theology engages with secularism and pluralism, especially in multicultural societies. What are the main approaches scholars take?
There's a spectrum of perspectives. Some, like Andrew March, advocate for a public reason model where Islamic ethics are articulated in ways accessible to secular audiences. Others, like Taha Jabir Alawani, resist privatization and insist that Islam must inform all aspects of life. This ongoing debate reflects deeper questions about identity and integration.
How does this tension manifest in daily life for Muslim communities, perhaps in Europe or North America?
Muslims often negotiate between upholding religious commitments and participating in pluralistic societies. For instance, debates over Islamic dress codes or halal food in public institutions exemplify these challenges and the role of theology in mediating them.
In recent years, the misuse of theological concepts has fueled extremism. How are scholars and institutions countering radical narratives using Kalām?
Theological education is central to this effort. Cambridge Muslim College, for example, trains imams to dismantle extremist interpretations by returning to classical doctrines, especially on jihad and takfir, emphasizing ethical constraints and communal responsibility. This counters simplifications exploited by groups like ISIS.
Are there statistics or case studies that show the impact of such programs?
Studies indicate that graduates of these programs are less likely to endorse extremist views and more likely to promote dialogue. Tim Winter's research, for instance, found that classical theological grounding reduces susceptibility to radical ideologies.
The digital age has transformed religious knowledge. What are the implications of online platforms for Islamic theological discourse?
Digital tools democratize access to scholarship, but also amplify misinformation. Platforms like Seeker's Guidance offer structured, credentialed courses, while charismatic preachers can bypass traditional scholarly checks. This has both empowered laypeople and created new challenges in maintaining doctrinal integrity.
How might online communities affect the evolution of Kalām in the coming years?
We're likely to see further fragmentation, but also innovation. Online debates foster global conversations, sometimes leading to synthesis, but at other times deepening ideological divides. The key will be fostering critical engagement and digital literacy.
As we look ahead, what are the most promising interdisciplinary developments in Islamic theology?
Emerging fields like neurotheology and environmental ethics are expanding the horizons of Kalām. Scholars such as Sayyid Hossein Nasser argue for an eco-tawhid approach, linking environmental stewardship to spiritual principles. Similarly, collaborations on AI ethics are bringing theologians into dialogue with scientists and policymakers.
Do you foresee greater global collaboration shaping the future of the field?
Absolutely. Networks like the International Institute of Islamic Thought facilitate cross-cultural research and curriculum development. This global connectivity ensures that Islamic theology remains a vibrant, adaptive discipline, capable of addressing humanity's most pressing questions.